What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. Now I know a lot of you guys might have read the title and asked yourselves if I had finally lost my mind, but definitely hear me out for just a second, because I love playing off-meta picks. You guys know that I'm a big guy when it comes to off-meta champions, and today we're taking a look at something that I believe is a hidden OP jungler, and that is Kog'Maw. Now Kog'Maw jungle actually works extremely well, and it has a win rate of around 53.5% at the moment, which is actually crazy high for this kind of an off-meta pick. It might be a little bit hard to believe at first, so let's explain how it works and you can try it out and maybe see for yourself. And big thanks to ProGuides.com for helping us out with the editing on this video. They do a lot of really awesome stuff on their site with some great content, and they have a free trial that gets you full access, so you don't have to take it from me. You can just check it out and decide for yourself if you like it or not. And if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, and if you don't, definitely hit that dislike. And if you don't feel like doing either of those things, then maybe just put meh in the comments to petition YouTube to give us a meh button. Anyway, let's get started. So the main strength of Koggy jungle is going to be Blood Razor, which is the strongest on-hit item in the game. And this is the real major part about what sets him apart and makes him so much better than Kog'Maw AD carry. Because Blood Razor is such a powerful item for him, and as an AD carry, Kog'Maw just can't get a hold of it because you have to take Smite. And this is a surprisingly big advantage if you can make it into the mid game, and thanks to the way that it scales with Ginsu's Rage Blade, your on-hit build just becomes insanely powerful. I mean, yeah, it might sound a bit silly, kind of like something you might expect to see from my boy Professor Milk, but look at what these items really give you. You get insane attack speed, you get tons of mixed magic and physical damage, which is amazing. You get a nice helping of lifesteal and even a bit of crit chance to make sure that you're a tank shredder that people just can't itemize against no matter what they try to do. Blood Razor itself is a significant advantage over Kog'Maw AD carry, and while you are still playing Kog'Maw, so you are still going to be that insane hyper carry in the late game. It can take a little bit of practice because Kog'Maw can sometimes be a little bit dependent on some support to survive in the early game, and although you don't have to worry about enemy AD carries in your jungle, you can be a little bit easy to invade in certain matchups. But with that being said, the first jungle clear is honestly surprisingly good. If you smite the Krugs for that stun buff and kite the camps a little bit, thanks to your W, you can just stun up jungle creeps really often for some relatively easy and safe clears. Ganks can maybe be a little bit awkward since you're slow and you don't have that much crowd control, but if you land the slow, you definitely have time to dish out plenty of damage, especially with the red buff, which just makes you do insane damage even in the early levels. So the ganks with him are kind of similar to like a Kindred almost in the sense, where the crowd control isn't necessarily amazing, but he has such a crazy amount of damage to back it up that they actually end up being pretty decent, honestly. And he works great with any laners that have their own hard crowd control, and as a result of his massive amount of damage, he does quite well in just 2v2 or 3v3 fights with the enemy jungler. So when do you want to pick Kog'Maw jungle? Well, honestly, he is just friggin' amazing against tank junglers. So you definitely want to do it if your enemy ever picks a tank jungler. The tank junglers are a little bit less mobile, they're way worse at invading, so you get to kind of just enjoy your early game with a little bit of peace and quiet, and once you ramp up onto your first on-hit items, you can just carry a game 1v5 by yourself, honestly, because there's nothing a tank is gonna do to stop you. You just stand still, vomit on them, and watch their health bars burn down in a matter of seconds. He's quite literally the sickest counterpick to a mobile tanky teams. You're also the king of objectives with Kog'Maw jungle, not so much controlling them with zoning tools, but you just take them down so goddamn fast, because it's pretty much the highest DPS of any character in the game. And with the lifesteal in your build, being squishy sometimes doesn't even matter that much, because you attack so damn fast that you can sometimes just heal up any damage that you might take. And this applies to the late game versus champions as well. You've got massive scaling and crazy damage output, which is something you definitely want on your side if you're in solo queue. Also, something that goes a little bit underappreciated is that when it comes to solo queue, teams in general, probably yourselves and the players you play against, are honestly just not that good at closing out games after a good mid game. They don't really chokehold the objectives like they should, and as a result, a lot more games reach that actual late game phase than otherwise would in something like competitive play, and Kog'Maw abuses this factor extremely well, because it gives you pretty good reliance to actually get to the late game even when you're behind. It's amazing for tilting people into throwing a match when they just fail to finish a game for so long that suddenly the enemy Kog'Maw jungle can just 1v5 them or take Baron no problem all by himself. Now, Kog'Maw jungle has a lot of strengths, and I definitely think it's a pretty solid pick and is a great option to try out. But, of course, it's not without weaknesses, and how are you going to play a champion if you don't know their weaknesses? The main one is because of early invading fighters like Lien, or for roaming assassins in teamfights like maybe LeBlanc that decide to leave their lane and try to invade you in the mid game. So you're going to have a little bit of a difficult time if you pick Kog'Maw into those types of champions, but there are a lot of ways to deal with it. Honestly, all you kind of really need to do is just ward a lot and really anticipate your opponents to make those kind of plays. I mean, you do have to ward a lot though, like you can't really go back to base and not pick up a pink ward. You need to be buying wards every time you back, and you have to check your minimap and really have a lot of map awareness to make sure no one is potentially missing from a lane or invading on you. If they do decide to hop in on you, there's not entirely that much you can do to escape. It's more about having to actually anticipate the invade in the first place, which you can do. Invades are something that are completely avoidable if you play properly. And the thing is that those types of champions that have that strong early game pressure that can take advantage of the weak early game of Kog'Maw are the types of champions that Kog'Maw just outscales like crazy. At some point in the game, you'll be able to kill them faster than they can kill you. You know, they say the best defense is a great offense after all, right? And people can't kill you if they're dead. Except zombies, but you get what I mean. The trick is using positional advantage to try and avoid mobile burst damage, unless you have god tier mechanics where you can dodge and still attack with your 5.0 attack speed. Other than that, you can just try to fight with your team, get them to protect you. You know, protect the Kog'Maw is still an amazing strategy, even with you chilling in the jungle. So definitely stick near your friends as the game starts to progress in team fights. Your damage just absolutely shreds tanks because you have mixed damage based on percent HP damage as well. So you might not be chunking squishies quite as hard as another AD carry, so if you do need a little bit more damage versus squishies, you can pick up something like an Infinity Edge or go for a little bit more of a traditional AD carry build. Kog'Maw's definitely going to be used best when picked against teams with tanks, so you might have to switch up your build, your playstyle a little bit if the enemy team doesn't have any true tanks themselves. Especially if the enemy team has a lot of mobile assassins, it might be a little bit questionable to pick Kog'Maw champion select, but the thing is that if you play against an enemy team composition that has 2, sometimes even 3 tanks if you're lucky, it's honestly just so insane. You can literally carry the entire game by yourself. He's an amazing, absolutely fantastic counter pick to tanks. And as well, with all of the off-meta picks, builds like this are a little bit dependent on the surprise factor. I mean, your first clear is actually quite bad if you don't actually start Krugs, because you really do rely on that stun buff kind of thing. So any enemy opponents that actually know about Kog'Maw jungle probably will know exactly where you're going to start, so because of that, you're going to be pretty vulnerable to invades if the enemy understands your champion. It's always going to work best when people don't really understand what's happening and they can't really plan for it, but since Kog'Maw jungle is pretty much an off-meta pick, at the moment I wouldn't really worry about it too much. You're going to make for some weird team comps as Kog'Maw jungle as well, but there's still some stuff you can plan out with your teammates to make it work even better. I mean, double AD carry is an interesting comp, but since you're the hyper carry, you might work a little bit better with a utility AD carry like Sivir or Ashe rather than another DPS focused carry. Just champions with tools that can keep you alive is pretty much always useful. You definitely need a tank as well to act as a frontline and peel enemies off so you can dish out damage, and honestly supports like Lulu or Janna, very defensive supports, are just flat out broken with Kog'Maw, so if you can get one of those on your team, that is just the dream. So to wrap things up, it's actually a pretty viable pick, but it is a little bit situational in certain team comps based on your team comp as well as your opponents, unless your mechanics are just so god tier that you can survive alone or by yourself, or maybe if you're playing with some friends or a pre-made group to where they can actually work together to protect you. His weaknesses are a little bit exploitable, to be honest, so he's not overpowered by any means, but the fact that he's an off-meta pick means that a lot of people just don't know his weaknesses, and it's awesome that you get that element of surprise and a ton of power if you can survive to the late game to use it. And in those perfect team comps where you're playing against 2 tanks on your opponents, he's honestly just god tier. He's insane. He's crazy. It's mind-blowing how good he is, and he's definitely hidden OP in those situations for sure. It's just a matter of actually getting that dream team in champion select. But the thing is that you can actually pick him in blind pick, because the thing is that your opponents are pretty much always going to think that it's going to be Kog'Maw AD carry. But if you aren't going for that flex pick strategy, you probably want to draft him last, or at least once you know the enemy team's composition is going to be something you can face, just so that the enemy team doesn't lock in a bunch of assassins to actually ruin your day. Anyway, definitely leave us your thoughts and experiences with Kog'Maw jungle in the comments. I love hearing about that kind of stuff. And looks like that's going to be it for me. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like, subscribe if you want. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.